Find a seat, spread out, plenty of room. Got 5 great companies presenting. All right, please take a seat. There's plenty of seats. You don't have to stand up. So Mike Spreadborough is up next with Novo Resources in Australia. So thanks, Mike. Look forward to hearing it.
Thanks, Geoff. So welcome everyone. Today's presentation is a bit of a snapshot of our corporate presentation, so you'll find that on the website, plus you'll find a few copies outside and a few giveaways and also at the Mining Club booth. So Novo Resources, out of all the people you hear from today, we're very different. We're at the front end of exploration. I can't even call our projects advanced, but are we excited about them? You better believe it. So as you'll hear, we've got a huge landmass. We work across 10 different traditional owner groups within our tenement, and we recognise their unique culture, heritage, beliefs and connections to land, waters and communities. So here's Novo. We are unique. We're a gold company that has over 10,000 square kilometres of tenement portfolio. To put that in an Asian perspective, that means we've got a tenement land mass that's 2 times the size of Bali. So that's our exploration portfolio. And on top of that, we have a small tenement holding in Victoria, just south of the Fosterville mine. We're Perth-based, but we are TSX listed, so we're not on the ASX. So for the people in this room, very easy to invest given we're North American focused, and we also have an OTC portion. So as I said here, we're really focused on large discoveries, 1 million ounce type discoveries within the Pilbara. We've got a very good exploration team, globally experienced, and they're leading the charge for us. Our key project, which I'm always going to talk about many times today, is Becher, and that's within our exploration area that we call the Egina Gold Camp. It's our most advanced project, but even advanced means it's on the early stages on its exploration journey. It does have the potential to be a major discovery. We've got a lot of work to do, but excitingly, and we'll talk about this, it's only 28 kilometres away from the large Mallina project by De Grey, and they have over 10 million ounces. So we're very much in the right neighbourhood. So this is us, the green, 10,000 square kilometres. Our land package extends from Karratha to Newman, or another way, it takes an hour and a half on a King Air to travel across our tenements. Our tenements are surrounded by major gold discoveries. The Mallina project that I've talked about, and I'll talk further, the Warriner Calidus project, Mount York with Corus Resources, Carlo Castle is a copper gold project with Artemis, and Andover, which is nickel and lithium. So we have a large exploration base. Right in the middle is the Egina Gold Camp, and that's where our key focus is. But on the eastern side of our tenements, we're busy drilling at Bellary Dome, which I'll talk about, but we also have over 700 square kilometres of tenements in the Mosquito Creek Basin. So a big package. We are gold focused, and we have recently started a divestment process or JV process for our West Pilbara copper, nickel and cobalt tenements, and on the east we have already divested or JV'd our lithium projects late last year to Litam. We want to focus clearly on being a gold explorer and discoverer. We believe our investors and investors in the market like to see pure gold plays rather than get confused with base metals and battery metals. So here's our core project or core area, the Egina Gold Camp. It's huge. We have a tenement package that covers continuously 80 kilometres long from Becher in the top to Nunnery North in the bottom. So huge package, and all the yellow dots refer to targets for us to follow up on. So up the top, Becher, we own 100% of Becher, so all the successes will come back to our shareholder, and as I said, it's our most advanced project. And at the bottom, Nunnery, which I'll talk about in a minute, we own 70% and the Creasy Group owns 30%. And as you'll see, it is a very exciting project that is very much untested. So here's a close-up of Becher. The yellow area represents 20 square kilometres of prospective ground. As I said, it's 28 kilometres from the Hemi project, which itself has a 6 million ounce reserve by De Grey, and the Malina project as a whole has 10 million ounces. And it's a credit to the De Grey team in the discovery of Hemi and the way that they've grown that resource. We're seeing exactly the same geology, the structures and intrusions that people have seen at Hemi, and whilst it's early days, we're excited with that prospect. So that yellow is a very large landmass. It takes a long time to explore 20 square kilometres, but already, as you can see with the red dots, we're delineating 5 key targets within that project. As you can see in the picture, the major east-north-east trending structures continue all the way from Hemi all the way into our area, and those 5 projects are related close to those structures. So here's a close-up. In September last year, we started drilling Becher. Between start of September and just before Christmas, we completed 32,000 metres of air core, over 1,400 holes. We're blessed with very shallow cover, 10 to 20 metres, which is absolutely fantastic when you're trying to do very large areas. The best result, 8 metres at 2.15. You might sit there and look at those grades, they don't sound exciting, but when you're drilling an area of 20 square kilometres and you're trying to hone in on the next area of drilling, those results give us great encouragement. The other thing to notice is each of those drill lines are 640 metres apart. This is a large-scale project that we've started, and when we come in follow-up, we'll actually bring them into 320. You can hide a lot of ounces between 640 metre drill lines. We've recently, and you'll see our announcements on our website, we've recently received all of the bottom hole geochemistry, and shown in the pink dots, maroon dots, is the areas that align up to the synucleotoids or the intrusions that really match what you see at Hemi. So we're excited by this initial phase of drilling. We're excited by what we see with the intrusions, and we've got a lot of targets to follow up, and we're heading that direction. So we're very shortly going to start an infill program for the rest of this quarter, quarter 2, and that'll be focused on air core drilling, and we will drill some deeper holes to test some geology. We're not in that point yet to go looking for a discovery, but we're definitely in that area where we need to prove the concepts that we're looking, close the spacings from 640 up to 320, and really hone in for the second half of the year. So this is a long-term project that will see continuation of news flow all the way through. So I want to talk about Nunnery, and as you remember on that picture, Nunnery North is down the bottom of that 80 kilometre strike length. So Nunnery is exciting. As we said up the front, it's untested, but our work to date has shown that we have over 1.4 kilometre of strike length of soils that are leading over 300 ppb. We also have picked up another trend of 1.2 kilometres of soil anomalies with over 30 ppbm. And as you can see in the results, the soil samples and the rock chip samples are absolutely exciting. So even at this early stage, the team are able to generate a great picture that you've seen here that really allows us to hone in on drilling that we'll do in the second half of this year. We just need to clear traditional owner approval, and we'll be drilling this project straight up in the second part of the year. So again, very early stage project. No one's ever drilled here. We've built the geological model, and our team are ready to go drilling in the second part of this year. So Bellary Dome, we've been trying to get into this project for many years, but finally we're there. We started drilling about 2 weeks ago. You'll see news flow come out of this project. Bellary Dome is the southern part of our tenement base. For those that know the Pilbara, it's near the town of Parapadu, so we have access to good roads and power and all of those good things. The key prospect in the Bellary Dome that we're chasing is Cardia. It's our primary target. It's been built up from work done in 2021, focusing on rock chips. And as you can see here, some really good results through that rock chips, 550 56 ppm and 116 ppm. So this has really allowed us to hone in on Cardia, and we've got this drilling program underway. So all up, the program we started 2 weeks ago, there's about 3,000 metres of reserve of RC drilling that we'll do, and then based on those results, we'll do a step out along strike for another 700 metres. So as you can already see, for Novo, for us going back to reconnaissance across our 10,000 square kilometres, we've built up a huge number of high priority projects, and we're in there executing the work to follow them up. We can't forget Victoria. We actually do like our small 22 square kilometre tenement base there, so it doesn't kind of match with the Pilbara, but we like the geology. It's complex. People that know Victoria know that it has spun out some unbelievable projects, Costerfield and Fosterville. So that's why we like this area. It's had a historical mining base in the past, but we're back there looking. We originally started this with a joint venture with GBM and Kalamazoo, but we recently announced that we've purchased both of those 50% owners, and we're in the middle of doing the final completion of the transaction. So it's a great area to be. If you're in Victoria, and Mr. Hudson will talk in a minute, it's a great place to go exploring because the rewards are very high if you're in the right geological setting. So since we've been involved in the last 2 years, we've done a lot of baseline mapping, we've done a lot of drilling holes to build the geological picture. We've actually now completed a 3D model of all the historical workings. We've done geophysics, we've done all the preliminary stuff to allow us to start targeting drilling programs. So the first part of this year we'll focus on continuing to build that picture, but in the second part of this year we'll actually go drilling some deep holes looking for primary gold targets. So even though it's a small part of our portfolio, it's a portfolio that we're very happy to have. Don't expect you to read this, but essentially after all the work that we've done in the last 2 years, Novo can now sit here and say we've got a very defined drilling program for the rest of this year, focused on the high priorities. We've still got a lot of reconnaissance drilling across our tenement package or reconnaissance geology work, but we now have a very clear focused program for the rest of the year. We've got a great board led by geologists and in Quentin Henney. We've got finance people, ESG people, and legal-based people that are across the world. So we've got a very, very good board. Our geological team is led by Kaz DeLuca. Some people in the room would know Kaz, but Kaz has an international experience working for large companies focused on gold across 4 different continents. So we've got a very good exploration team that is leading the charge. So this is where we are. We've got about 30 million cash in the bank. We've got a portfolio, a very unusual investment portfolio of around about $20 million. So we're quite well positioned for the work that we want to do at the moment. And a reminder, we're TSX listed with an OTC framework as well. A very simple core shareholder base that remains very supportive. People were talking about Eric before, but Eric's brought us a supporter within Novo, IMC. A lot of people in here would know IMC because they're Singapore-based. Litam is a lithium producer. People would know Mark Creasy, an Australian explorer, owns 5% of our register, and Agnico Eagle are there at 3%. So we have a good shareholder base, and we look forward to growing that shareholder base as we move forwards with our exploration success. ESG is important to us. We carry a board member with ESG experience. We see our future working with traditional owners and making gold happen cannot happen without ESG focus. So we've built our framework around the ICMM, and we'll continue to build that platform. So finally, we are a gold explorer, predominantly based in Western Australia, but we have that area in Victoria. We're looking for the big ones, the million-ounce type discoveries. We've got an aggressive exploration program across that 10,000 square metre portfolio. Our success focus at the moment is on Becher. That's our key primary target, and that will consume most of our efforts this year, but in parallel to that, we'll do drilling at Lowry, we'll do some more drilling in Victoria, we'll do some drilling at Nunnery. We've got drill rigs spinning already this year. They will bring a strong pipeline of news flow. all the way through the rest of this year. As I said, ESG values are very important to us. We believe our industry has to be sustainable, and we're part of that journey. We've got a very credentialed board, very good experienced management team and exploration. So I think, as you've heard, we are a bit unique, very large land package, but we've got substantial projects that we're executing, and I believe we've got a great future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Pretty much right on time, so we can take one question from the floor if anyone has a question.
You weren't going to ask a question, Damien. Couldn't help himself.
Mike, thank you for that. Just a couple of quick ones here. Cash burn, and what's the sort of timetable to resource reserve? What's the pathway there?
The later one is, who knows? We leave it to the exploration gods. The way I describe Becher is it's like an onion, and if exploration's about 10 layers of an onion, I reckon we're through layers 2 and 3 of Becher. The work that we do this quarter in closing the drill spacings, drilling some deeper holes to look at geology, will really dictate the quarter 3 drilling, which is, I think, will be the real focus on, let's use it, resource in brackets definition. So that's really, really important. So thanks.
And cash burn?
Probably about, 5 million a month, plus or minus how much air core we do. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks very much. Next, we've got Dr. Matthew Greentree from Ausgold. There we are.
Right, thank you for the invite and the chance to speak today. We're a fair way on from the last speaker, but we also have a very large land holding, and where we're focused is in the southwest part of the state, but very close to Perth. And what we've identified, something quite exciting, very large resource base, and also now a very large reserve position of 1.28 million ounces, which has actually put us as one of the largest, if not largest, undeveloped open cut operation in Western Australia. So I'll take you through the Ausgold story. Just quickly, we're actually in a trading hold at the moment, so a few of these things will change, but over the last few months we've been making quite a few changes as we gear up for our DFS. So we've made some changes to the board, and Geoff Jones has just taken the position as a non-exec chairman. Geoff Jones has a lot of experience building projects in the goldfields in Western Australia, so we're really pleased to have him in that position, and it really fills out the skill sets in that team. As I said, we've got some things going on, and we're going to be well funded going forward. Our major shareholders, Dundee Goodman, and I've got 12.5%, and Jupiter Precious Metals have 6% at the moment, with directors holding 12%. So we've got a lot of skin in the game here as well. So a little bit about the project. Large resource base of 2.16 million ounces, and we added last year 960,000 ounces, and we did that at a very low cost of $11 per resource ounce, and I'm talking Australian dollars here. The reason why we're so efficient is because we know what our ore body looks like. We've got a few tools in the geophysics kit to help us with that, particularly downhole EM has been very effective in exploring this deposit and this belt. We've got a lot of confidence in our resource, and I saw those comments by Mike Lowry. We've done a lot of work in terms of the geology here and understanding the geometry of the ore body and putting a lot of drilling in. In fact, we've got almost 300,000 metres of drilling into this resource. We haven't stopped there though. We've got a very strong view on the upside of the project. We've got 5,500 square kilometres around the core resource area. It's quite an interesting area. Until fairly recently, the southwest Yilgarn was probably an area that wasn't particularly exciting. When I first joined Ausgold, I really could have pegged anywhere in the Yilgarn. There's a couple of spots I wish I pegged, including the Mcnamara area, just north of Perth. But that's really sparked a lot of interest in this region, and we've seen some of the majors move into that, such as Anglo American and FMG. So we're starting to see, I think, a lot more activity on that front. Ausgold's, one of the other things I'd like to point out there with the Ausgold project, Tanning project, is it's a fantastic site to work in. It's not remote. It's 3.5 hours drive out of Perth. We have access to grid power to site already. We've got sealed roads and got 4 towns within 30 kilometres radius of the area. So accessing workforce, which has been a critical issue in Western Australia, is something that we think will really stimulate the development of this project. The current DFS, which is underway and due to come out in the third quarter, is focusing on the same concept that we had in our pre-feasibility study, a 3 million tonne throughput, delivering 1.28 million ounces. It's a long life project, and we think it's likely to be a lot longer as well. So at the current study level, it's defined for 11 years. Recent drilling's really been pretty productive as well. We've put in a 25,000 metre drill program over the last 4 or 5 months, and you can see some of those results there are outstanding results. And we're targeting a resource update in the third quarter this year. So I'll just take you through what we came up with in our PFS study. It's based on the concept of processing 3 million tonnes per annum, giving us over 100,000 ounces for over 11 years. The first 6 years, though, because the geometry of the ore body gives us much higher grades early on. So the first couple of years, we're looking at grades closer to 2 grams per tonne, rather than the average of 1.25 grams per tonne life of mine. That gives us a very, very good internal rate of return over 40% and a payback of just about 20 months. We based that on a $2,300 Australian dollar gold price. So if you put it closer to where we are today, I think today we're just a bit over $2,900 Australian. You can see the massive impact that would have on both the NPV and the internal rate of return. A lot of this I've already stated, but I think one of the things I'd like to just draw your attention to is that bottom line there. The access to grid power means that we've got very low cost energy here compared to a lot of more remote projects. We've also got an ability to blend in a lot of renewables in that energy mix. The West Australian grid has about 30% renewables in it as a base case, but there's also some large developments around the site there that includes some very large wind farms. So there's likely to be a good mix of renewables in there. So it's a very good sign, particularly for funding as we develop the project. We based all the financial models, and you can see some of those metrics here on that 2300, but we're actually quite conservative with our pit estimations. And they were based on an $1870 Australian gold price. So through the PFS studies, and we've also got a scoping study looking at some higher throughputs as well. We're looking at leveraging on the higher gold price. So we expect to see a lot of news on that coming forward over the coming months. It's a fairly unique project, but we're still relatively undervalued. We say it's unique particularly because it's a very simple project, very simple metallurgy, relatively high recoveries, and it's an open pit operation as well. So it's a large resource reserve position. And you can see on this graph here, it's our peers with more than 1 million ounces in resource. There's only 3 of us that have got meaningful ore reserves there, and they're quite different projects to what we're presenting at Ausgold. Bellevue is a high-grade underground project. De Grey is a very large project, but also comes with a high capital cost. We're a relatively simple project with a $225 million development cost. So I think really we're very well placed to take this forward. And really I've outlined some of those key differentiators on a point here, and can download this from our website. I've already mentioned as well what's going on. Large amount of drilling already underway. Expect to see a lot of results coming through. We've already had some fantastic results in the last quarter. The resource update will focus in on what we call the central zone. That's the main resource areas, but we'll also start looking at some of our more regional prospects as well. We're looking at a scoping study. That'll come out later in the second quarter, and that's really looking up throughputs from 4 to 6 million tonnes per annum. And that will take us from 100,000 ounces through 150 and potentially up to 200,000 ounces. And that's really understanding, I guess, some of the dynamics with that and some of those options that we have taking the project forward. So now I'm a geologist, so I'll start taking you through some of what the ore body actually looks like and some of the things that get me very excited about the prospectivity of this region. It's a large land holding. Not many junior companies have an entire greenstone to play with, and we do. And in the core of that, we've got over 2 million ounces in resource. So what we're looking at this is, can we be a multi-million ounce project? And that's where we do get excited. So the main central zone, that's where 2 million of that resource sit. Has really been focused on the surface 150 metres. We're looking at open cut material. We've also started to drill beneath it, and we're getting some very good results there as well. But along that 17-kilometre trend, there's two other areas that you can see in that map there with the colours representing golden soils. To the north, our Data Time prospect, and further south, past Dingo, the Lucan areas. These areas have had relatively little exploration, but we think they have real potential to add a material amount to the resource base. It's a little bit different to what we see in the rest of the goldfields. For any geologists out there, it's a high-grade metamorphic deposit. And what we find is that the gold's focused in some very key areas within the folded rocks. They have a lot of sulfides associated with it, so we're able to detect that with downhole EM, which is a technique used a lot by the nickel sulfide explorers. But it's very continuous along strike and down plunge, and that's been, I think, key to our understanding of the ore bodies here. And you can see Jinkers there, which is the major part of the resource in the central zone. We've hardly touched that down plunge component, and where we have, you can see some of those very high-grade results, which are still to be included in our current resource. So later this year, we'll start to include those numbers. And what we expect is, although we're calling this underground potential here, those numbers will actually fall into the bottom of the open pit, with leaving potential to chase it down plunge further, with a potential underground in the future. Likewise with the southern zone, this one's still early days, but we've started to get some interesting results. It's a long strike length, 8 kilometres long, past the current resource. We started putting reconnaissance RC drilling in there. We've got a large envelope of greater than 0.1 gram per tonne gold in that red contour you can see on the map there. Extending well beyond that, we're seeing within RC drilling, 6 metres at 2 grams. So that's really telling us that there's more to come here. And I think with some systematic work which we're engaged in at the moment, we'll start to do a much larger resource base, including this area in the southern zone. And what we'll talk about now is some of the areas outside that main resource envelope, where the focus has been for the current studies. One of those is what we call the Data Time prospect, and that actually sits in the northern zone, so it's only a few kilometres away from where we're going to put a mill for the Kittanning Gold project. We'd left this one alone for a couple of years, but we came back with some new concepts and got some fantastic results, including up to 100 gram per tonne or 99 gram per tonne gold there, with very, very coarse visible gold. It might be a bit hard to see from the back there, but that red circle, there's a particle of gold there. It's about 1 centimetre long. So some very high grades, more to come from this area as well. Moving to the northeast, this is an area, and I'll just step back 2 slides, just up in this area up here. Another area that we think has got real potential to give us some material resource. The Stanley area, you can see some fantastic grades. It's about 40 kilometres trucking from the main project area. You don't need much of that grade to really add to your resource base. Duggan, again, is just north of the Stanley area. There was a discovery by our team last year, and you can see, again, some very high-grade results in that area too. So we're piecing this belt together. There hadn't been a lot of work done in the region when we got to it. We found a very large resource base, but we're also starting to identify areas outside that core project that will add value in the future. So really have a look at Ausgold. I think it's one of the best value stocks on the ASX. We can see already a very large project in development, but we've also got the potential for some major upside. So thank you.
Thank you very much. A very interesting story and lots of upside potential. Time for one question. Anyone in the audience? No, it's a tough crowd.
Yeah, I know.
It's a tough crowd. Here we go. Yep, I think you're just going to have to speak loudly.
I probably wouldn't be standing here if I actually knew the answer, but what we've seen over the last few years, particularly in Australian dollars, because of the relative exchange rates, is prices that we've never seen before. And we've just, I guess, toyed with $3,000 an ounce in Australian dollars. And you can see from our economics here, we're producing gold around $1,300 for those first 6 years. So I'll take that margin any day. I think Damien was going to have a go at me too. I just saw him moving with intent.
Matt, couple for me. Anything that keeps you awake at night in terms of permitting, geology, or someone knocking at the door launching a bid? What stresses you?
You're trying to turn me into a nervous wreck, Damien. All of the above, but look, really, the permitting in Western Australia, where we are, is pretty straightforward. It's a process where we're comfortably sitting on mining leases for our resource areas. We're in negotiations to access and purchase the underlying freehold tenure, which is actually a pretty good position because it's extinguished native title in that. So in terms of permitting, it's quite straightforward. It's a little different to what you see elsewhere. People launching a bid, yeah, sure they can. Hopefully they've got deep pockets, because we've got some pretty sticky big shareholders there. What was the third one?
Geology.
No, geology doesn't keep me awake at night anymore.
Well done, good answer, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And next we have Michael Hudson from Southern Cross Gold, one of our kind sponsors of our drinks reception. Evidently Mike wasn't aware of that, but he is now.
Great, have one on us, please. Now, this is the moment of truth. Let's see if we can get that signal up and running. There we are. Woo! We did it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Managing Director of Southern Cross Gold, and over the next 15 minutes we're going to go through a few slides, and then we're going to get into the 3D model of our new discovery in Victoria, so on the other side of Australia. I titled this the third Victorian gold rush because literally that's what we're going through, and very, very appropriate for the name of this conference. The first gold rush was in the 1850s. And then the next gold rush arguably was just pre-World War I, when technology improved the way they could go deeper and cyanide came in, and now we're producing more gold in Victoria than we have for 100 years, due to the discovery of a new and different style that was not the past. So 80 million ounces have come out of Victoria, but it's a new style that's really driving the opportunity, and we've got the best discovery outside those current mines. The disclaimer, nobody's mentioned that today, so I'll make a bland comment that I'm the optimist in the room. I'm a geologist, so be very aware about my forward-looking statements. Now, Southern Cross was listed only in May last year as a spin-out of a Canadian company, a company I co-founded and still chair, called Mawson Gold. We focused the search in Victoria on these new style of deposits. We call them epizonal, and I'll describe a little bit about those. We've had some great drill hits, some fantastic hits over the last 8 to 10 months. In fact, we were the third best IPO last year in Australia across the whole ASX based on these drill results that you can see before us. We own the freehold land, we're fully permitted, we've got over $17 million in the bank to drill 30 kilometres over the next year, and we've got a tiger by the tail, and I hope I can demonstrate that. We've got a team that's been in place for the last couple of years. We were drilling a year or so before the IPO when it was in that Canadian company, so we had a baked-in team ready to go when we came out the gate, and we're all still in place there. In terms of the register, Mawson still owns over 50%, so it's quite a tight register. That stock is escrowed until May 2024. Institutions are starting to come into the stock. We did a $16 million raise in December, and there's a lot of commonality of shareholders from Franklin, Templeton, Conwave, and probably a name that hasn't been mentioned. Eric Sprott's been mentioned, but probably his peer in North America is Pierre Lassonde, and Pierre and some of his colleagues are also large investors in this asset. This is the geological slide, and there's a few geologists in the room, so this is for you. Down here we have what made Victoria famous, the Ordovician style gold of Bendigo and Ballarat, and they've been abject failures in the modern day. That's because they're unreconcilable in a modern day resource and in a mine. So it's very hard to put basically an economic quantity of metal. We just can't estimate it appropriately. So that's what keeps SRK up at night. I know that if they're dealing with one of these projects. What we're looking at is this style of deposit. 70 million years later, it's a very different style. It forms at a different level of the crust. It forms geologically in a different area, and I'll show that. But what is a key point here is if you're looking at this style, which is the epizonal style up here, it transitions from the upper levels where you get gold and antimony, and we too do have antimony, and that will be a big part of the political license, at least in this project. It's about 10 or 15% of the in situ value. But as you go to depth, it transitions to what becomes very high-grade deposits. And you've all heard of Fosterville. Fosterville is the highest grade deposit underground mine on Earth still today, just down the road from us. And that's what happened to them. We also heard Costerfield mentioned, and that's that zoning that's happening there in that mine too. So we're looking down to a kilometre depth already, looking for these Cinderella zones at depth as these epizonal systems transform as we go to depth. And here's why Victoria does matter. There's a few Western Australians in the room, and if you know Australians well, you know nothing comes between East and West, and basically the East built the gold industry, the West took it for a long time and still very much own it, but the Victorian side of things was really only brought back to life by the Canadians. So we see some Canadian flags here. Fosterville is owned by a Canadian company, Eagle, and Costerfield is owned by Mandalay. So it really goes under the radar still on the ASX. We've brought these assets back to the ASX so the Australian market can actually enjoy in one of these great discoveries. So you can see the grades here. This is from 21. We haven't been able to update the 22 numbers yet, but you can see Fosterville tops in terms of grade. And then if you look down here on the other side, 300 odd bucks production costs. So they make great economic deposits as well. So that's our style, that's what we're looking for. And what are we doing that's a little different? This is quite a detailed chart, but this is since Fosterville was rediscovered. You know, it was a pretty average mine for 20 years, a refractory mine, but in 2015 they started to see these extraordinary grades at depth. And this is every exploration drill hole in the industry in Victoria, outside the mines, since then, since 2015. So on the x-axis you can see drill hole width, and y-axis drill hole depth. The orange are our peers, so the bubbles are sized by grade times width, so Victoria is traditionally thin and high grade. That's the nuggety styles. The blue is us at our one project, Sunday Creek. You can see we're getting exceedingly thick intersections from 20 to 50, 80 and even exceeding 100 metres at times. And we're doing where others have feared to tread, we're going to depth for that reason that I was explaining, that transition of these deposits. So we want to get down to depth, and we actually just put a result out at 249 grams depth just down here. This chart hasn't been updated because it's only a few days old, just from the most recent press release that you can look at. And I'll move forward, but in any 1 week since we were IPO'd in May, we've been in the ASX top 10 on gold intersections in any 1 week that we put a press release out 11 times. So it's significant on the ASX, it's significant globally, this project. And this is where the magic starts now. I can start to spin this around, so you may like to grab your paper bags if I start rotating things a little too fast. So here we are in Melbourne down here. The green are those Bendigo Ballarat deposits, those nuggety things. The orange are the ones we're looking for. So we have Fosterville out here, we're out here with Costerfield. So they're geographically separate. There's very good reason for that they form above a part of the Earth's crust, and we're looking down 40 kilometres in the Earth's crust here. You've got to be above this orange rock, basically. And if you're above that orange rock, you can form these very later style of deposits that we call the epizonal deposits. Now, if we zoom in on our deposit just here, or our project, I should say, that's 100% owned, and that's this Sunday Creek project down here. We also have the along strike extensions of Costerfield here at Redcastle. That's a 70% joint venture in our favour, and then another joint venture up here. We also have a lot of land with the right of first refusal, 3,000 square kilometres up through here. But this is the only focus for this talk, being only a few minutes left, that we're going to talk about. That's the Sunday Creek project. So if we just zoom into that project itself there, key points here. This is the only part of the drill area across what is a 12-kilometre long exploration trend. There's 11 kilometres of old historic mines. Fosterville had a very similar footprint pre its discovery, 11 kilometres of historic mines, so that's a nice analogy to make. And until about 2 weeks ago, this trend out from the main drill area that I'll focus on in a minute was undrilled. We just put a rig out through here just in the last few weeks, so you'll see results start to come. Zooming in, you can see that trend, and looking to the northeast along the whole trend. A few key points. This area here is freehold. We own it, 320 acres. Doesn't give you a right to mine, but it gives you right to access, and it's best to deal with a landholder who's a good landholder, and I can assure you we're a pretty good landholder. Then there's another landholder out here who's a quarrying family, and then we deal with the state through the state forest out through here, which is reserved for forestry, wood collection, motorbike riding and deer hunting. So it's three landholders. That's a bit of a secret of working in Victoria. Now, if we just look at this LiDAR, which has changed the way we can explore these old gold fields, a couple of things just to point out. The mineralisation and the trend of mining ran east-west, but you can see some of these old areas through there are north-west trending. So that's one point, is that the old-timers, with this LiDAR, this laser imaging, we can see that they were mining across the high-grade trend. And then if we go out to where there's no drill results, certainly no drilling, 3 kilometres away, we can see the same footprint over, half a kilometre in this instance, the same northwest structures across the east-west trend, so like a ladder. Now let's go another 7 kilometres, and that's where we're drilling today, and you can see the same footprint of mineralisation, this east-west trend, essentially with this laddering of the high grades across it that the old-timers showed us. So there's a lot of upside. Big systems have big footprints, and this has got a big footprint. Now, if we just go in and look underground now to this deposit, the main drill area that we've drilled is 800 metres essentially from here to here. There is some historic holes just near surface here at Christina, and we've just put out new results. I'll put a blue marker just out there and a new result here, which 249 grams over 0.3, which was a 12 metre at 7 intersection, and there was half a metre at 17 here. So nearly a kilometre between those two drill holes in the last few days. But the key point really is that this is all the gold, and I'll show how it all stacks together. But you can see that we're drilling a very large system. We're drilling it down to 800 metres so far, which is down here. This was the big drill hole that we put out just pre-Christmas. It was 0.5 kilometre from the start to the end of mineralisation. So that was what really opened up this prospect and brought a lot more eyes to it. The yellow holes are those that we've still got in the lab. So we're drilling with 4 drill rigs. We've got 30 kilometres ahead of us this year, and there's always about 10 holes in the lab. And like I think it was Black Cat said, there's always news flow from Southern Cross. So you can see there's some very deep parts of the system to come. This I should say, is available on our website. There'll be some QR codes at the door so you can look at it in detail because Geoff's just given me the buzz, but you can start to see there's some very, very good grades across this system. If you can't read that, I implore you to go and look at this. I'm just going to buzz through this, but there's basically the average grade across this system is in every drill hole 11 metres at 3 grams at a lower cut, or 1.5 at 20 grams if you look across the whole system, and a number of those intersections anastomose so they can form these very wide zones. So if we just look at what the control is, this is the key point, I suppose, on understanding the control and where we're going. You can start to see these northwest trends with this east-west zone, and that's exactly what the LiDAR was telling us that the old-timers found, and that's what we can see with these grey zones. That we've got something like 26 of these individual chutes. They average 10 to 20 metres width. They're about 40 metres long, and they at least extend from surface down to 800 metres, and it's really the drill string that will bring them all together. But there's a hell of a lot of undrilled areas right across here, and we'll be testing all these areas as we, and we're just saying we drill gold out there for the first time. So a lot more drilling to come. You know, this system's open 10 kilometres that way. And then the key last part of the puzzle before we finish up is that this green rock is the host rock. So we've got a very good definition on what hosts the gold. The veins are within that green host, but that green host rock's a dike breccias shear zone, very well defined, and that's what we see over 10 kilometres. So we understand the controls. That's why we've been able to be very successful at our exploration and target to depths that really others haven't looked at much in our industry, and certainly in Victoria. So with that, I will just summarise without going to the final slide that we're fully permitted, we're fully cashed up, $17+ million in the bank. We've got 30 kilometres coming, we've got 4 drill rigs turning, we've got one of the better discoveries in the space, and keep your eyes on us because there's a lot more to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very impressive. It's good to see old mining guys using some technology.
It's true.
Time for one question. Do we have anyone in the audience? Surely there's got to be a question on that. Down the back.
Thanks, David. David's one of the world's experts on antimony, so I've got to be very careful with my answer here. The antimony is related to gold, but not one-to-one. There's actually a much closer association, like there is in Fosterville and Costerfield with gold and arsenic. The antimony is slightly later for the most part. Generally, if you get high-grade antimony, you will get high-grade gold, but not always. So the correlation coefficient is less than arsenic, but it's a pretty good indicator, and it's all within the package and all within that sort of those dimensions I was talking about. But you know, whether it's 1 minute later or 20,000 years later, we're not sure, but it does overprint the gold event.
Okay, thank you very much. a nice pregnant pause there before the clap. Next we have Alto Metals, and we have Matthew Bowles. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Geoff. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here in Singapore to share the Alto Metals story. Thanks to the Sydney Mining Club for putting on the event, and thanks to the sponsors. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alto Metals and why we're so excited about our Sandstone Gold Project, which is a historic high-grade gold mine. We had a really big year last year. We drilled about 50,000 metres of drilling, and that equated, yesterday we announced a major resource update, which I'll walk through shortly. We've got rigs back on site now, and we're hitting this hard, and this is the story that you'll see throughout this. We're not afraid of drilling, and we're just finding that this resource is completely constrained just by drilling. So it's a pretty amazing story, and we're quite excited to be telling it. Just a disclaimer to read in your own time. So, as I said, we're a West Australian advanced gold explorer. We're in a Tier 1 jurisdiction in WA. We're surrounded by multi-million ounce deposits and operating gold mines, and we've got 740 square kilometres over the Sandstone Greenstone Belt, which has already produced over 1.3 million ounces. So it's amazing sort of greenstone that we've got a dominant ground position over. Our resource currently sits at 832,000 ounces. It's within optimised pit shells, very good grade, 1.5 grams per tonne, and importantly, that resource is very, very shallow. 90% of it is less than 150 metres from surface, 70% of it is less than 100 metres. So it's I think it's a great outcome that we have 12 months of work drilling this resource out to be able to get a major resource update like that's pretty exciting. The resource is still open. It's open along strike and at depth, and as I said, we can see that resource will continue to grow with further drilling. The other key thing is that we have undertaken some initial metallurgical test work. We're getting up to 98% recoveries. So just from what we've seen so far, the gold can be liberated through a very simple CIL process. So all the things you want to see when you're looking and evaluating these gold projects. And as I said, we've got rigs back on site, we're drilling, and hopefully we should have the first few results in the next few weeks. Just quickly on the corporate side, so we've got 613 million shares on issue. We're trading at about 7 cents Australian. So market cap's just over 40, and that equates to an EV per ounce of just about $47. So we think that's pretty cheap compared to a number of our peers. The board have a very good combination between financial and technical. They've been involved in a number of other project developments. They've also been involved in sort of corporate transactions as well. So there's a track record of delivering shareholder value. We've got a fantastic exploration team. They love being on site. They're also supported by two key, very well-known geologists in Australia, sort of Barry Bourne and Ed Boltus. Ed and Barry have both been involved in a number of major gold discoveries in Australia. So we've got a really good team that know what big discoveries look like, and that's really important when you're having a crack at sort of one of these greenstone belts that's the size that we have. And also the share register, I really want to highlight that. We've got the top 20 hold about 70% of the stock, so it's very, very tightly held. That register hasn't changed in sort of 4 to 5 years. We've got a very supportive shareholder base that love the strategy that we're pursuing at Sandstone and continue to support us. So Sandstone is a historic high-grade gold project. It's had mining activity since the early 1900s. 2 high-grade reefs were mined at Sandstone, Hax and Arroyo. Arroyo produced 200,000 ounces at 16 grams. Hax was 200,000 ounces at 25 grams. Mining stopped there really when the First World War broke out. More recently, the exploration activity has focused on oxide, near-surface oxide ounces. A lot of that was because of the oxide mill that was on the property. And so really that mill was driving the overall exploration. And the image that was on the front screen, that was Lord Nelson. That's one of our pits. It was an oxide pit. It was mined down to 90 metres, produced 200,000 ounces at 4.6 grams. And when the mining hit fresh rock, they stopped mining because the fresh wouldn't go through the oxide mill. We don't have that oxide mill, so we don't have that problem. Our exploration is driven by geology. It's not driven by the mill. And it was a great place to start to sort of step out at Lord Nelson and start to sort of test that mineralisation. Our resource sits at the moment 50-50 between oxide and fresh, so I think it just demonstrates that as we start to test the fresh, we are finding more oxide as well, and it's becoming a very large system. So as I said, we're here in the East Murchison. As you can see, the blue there overlays most of that sandstone greenstone belt, surrounded by multi-million ounce deposits, number of mills. The area is serviced fantastically by amazing infrastructure. There's sealed roads that run through the project. You can drive out to the project from Perth. It takes about 8 hours. You can fly out in a charter plane. Takes about an hour and a half at a charter flight. There's airstrip at Sandstone. We've got 2 houses there. Or you can fly commercial flights into Mount Magnet. It's about an hour drive from Mount Magnet. So it's a really, really good spot, very easy to get to. There's a gas pipeline being built towards the south of Sandstone. So all the things you want to see as you're looking at the next step of taking these things further into development. And this is just a zoom in on that sandstone greenstone belt. So we're abutted on either side by 2 major shear zones. So you have the UME shear on the western side and then the Edale shear on the eastern side. And you've got that sandstone greenstone belt in the middle. The red dots there are where our resource currently sits. Most of those resources are on granted mining leases. And when we started to explore this project, really the first place, given the history, and there are so many sort of deposits and historical open pit mines, how do you prioritise that? And that was one of the biggest challenges for the company, certainly at our size at the time, as to how we, I guess, unlock the value as quickly as possible based on sort of limited funds at the time. And really we just focused on where the existing resources were. We could see that they weren't closed off, they were open along strike and at depth, and we've certainly sort of added significant ounces, as you'll see in the next slide. So this really just, to me, and hopefully to you, shows these resources are just limited or constrained by drilling. In 2021, we drilled 60,000 metres. That was more than the company had drilled in the last 4 years combined. A lot of that previous years was we'd had a number of hostile takeover approaches that really hampered us from being able to raise funds and get out there and have a crack at the ground. And we actually saw those bids as a strong endorsement over the property. So I said in 2021, we hit it hard. We effectively doubled the resource there. Last year we drilled 50,000 metres, 40,000 of that went to resource drilling. There was 10,000 of pure exploration. We've increased that resource now to 832,000 ounces, and that's all constrained with an optimised pit shells based on a $2,500 Aussie gold price. We used 2,500 because that's what the previous resource was based on. Current Aussie gold price just sits under just $3,000. So we'd expect to see, and that's where we're showing the unconstrained resource of just over 1 million ounces. So we'd expect to see some of those ounces fall into a larger open pit, depending on what optimisations we used and what gold price, and with further drilling. And as you can see, that inset there shows those ounces per vertical metre. The deposit is very, very shallow. So this is looking at the Alpha domain, as we're calling it. So it's down the southeast of the property. So it's on that eastern side where the Edale shear is. And this image here is it's max gold over magnetics. And what you'll see there is down in that southeast, the rocks have actually folded back around themselves, and they've created this 20-kilometre long corridor which hosts most of those resources. And then as you move up to Indomitable, at the top of the screen there, the rocks actually refold back around themselves. So from a geological targeting point of view, it's a fantastic spot. We started at Lord Nelson. As I said, that was the image on the front. And we grew the Lord Nelson resource. Then we focused on Lord Henry, which is at another open pit at the bottom end of a large granodiorite. And that's now become the Lord's Camp, as we're calling it. It's 400,000 ounces. And then moving up to Vanguard. So Vanguard was 50,000 ounces. We've grown that to 150,000 ounces. It's defined over 2 kilometres. It's open in a northwest-southeast direction. It's only down to 150 metres, so there is a little bit of fresh there, but sort of quite a lot in oxide as well. There's a high-grade sort of 50,000 ounces over 4 grams, and this is all sort of very open from surface. And if you follow that corridor up, where we spent most of our drilling this year was on growing Indomitable. Indomitable was 70,000 ounces. It's now just over 200,000 ounces. So we've pretty much tripled the size of that. And the purpose was we wanted to demonstrate that these deposits would grow, and they really would grow with a lot more drilling. And we've now built some amazing key camps, and they're all within 10 kilometres of each other, which when we start to look at development scenarios, having these key camps is what's going to support that as we go forward. And this is it, just looking at, I guess, those multiple regional targets. And I guess our pipeline, we have got some outstanding projects within our pipeline. I mentioned sort of Hudson and Arroyo, and we get asked the question quite a lot, why aren't we looking at those deposits when, why are we spending time on Vanguard and Indomitable? And I guess the simple answer is, we're not going to leave gold to find gold. Indomitable, as I said, is defined over 3.5 kilometres. It's open in all directions. There's a lot of smoke there. There's a lot of gold, and that's a big indication, or a very strong indication of something significant at depth. And that's really what we're looking at doing. The work that we have done at Hudson and Arroyo, if you look on our platform, we put some announcements out at the end of last year. We're actually looking at it from a system point of view. So rather than just looking at those two historic mines that are located on that eastern side, there's another big shear zone there. And what we're trying to target is there another sort of repeat reef lurking undercover there? So it's really just that approach. But I think the systematic approach that we've taken to date has certainly delivered. And this is probably one of my favourite slides, and I think summarises the whole proposition around Alto, given the history that has been there for quite some time. So the image on the left there is it's the whole tenement and all the drilling that's ever been done over sandstone. So you would be forgiven for thinking that sort of the whole belt is completely done and you wouldn't really find much. That is until you look at the image on the right. And the image on the right is all the drilling that's deeper than 100 metres. And it's pretty amazing for a greenstone belt in Western Australia to have had limited drilling. When you look at some of the other greenstone belts at Agnew to the east of us and Mount Magnet to the west, I mean, Agnew's got an endowment of over sort of 10 million ounces. It's got underground mining operations, the same with Mount Magnet. Sandstone hasn't got any underground operations. I mean, the only things that were mined from underground mainly were the two high-grade reefs. There's a little bit of activity at Bullock, but it really hasn't had that level of drilling. And I think that's, these orogenic gold systems go much, much deeper. And we're adding, significant oxide ounces, but we're really just still scratching the surface. And we believe that sort of with some targeted drilling that we're starting to do now, we potentially could unlock something significant at depth. So how does 2023 look for us? It's pretty much the same. We've got rigs back on site. We're drilling. We're drilling at Indomitable. We're following up on some of the great results we had from last year. Some very high grade, sort of 27 metres at 7 grams from 20 metres down. Some outstanding results. The team love being on site. They've all got their favourite project. We're systematically working through and drilling those. We're going back and testing Vanguard, and we're looking at some of the high-grade deep tapping structures, certainly that are starting to show up at Indomitable. And then we want to work out how we're going to attack Lord Nelson as well, which is a large granodiorite. And we've got the geological model on that. It's plunging to the south. We just need to get back there and drill it, but it's certainly in that prioritisation. So why invest in Alto? Well, we're located in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. We've got a growing resource. It's constrained just by drilling. From what we can see, it's rapidly growing. It hasn't really been tested at depth. And I think for what we have, it's quite amazing for a historic gold project to be sitting on a major greenstone belt and have had limited drilling. So I think for us, it's just about drilling more and coming along for that journey with us and seeing how we advance over the next 12 months. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, it does always amaze me how much shallow drilling there is in Western Australia where people haven't really looked, 50, 100 metres. Yeah.
I guess it's a function of the gold price at the time as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But then many places are excluded. But using new techniques and having a different mindset, you can unlock new things like you guys have.
Yeah.
Time for a question. Anyone have a question? You got to ask Alto a question because they're buying drinks afterwards. So. Anyone?
No. I think I covered it all. think there's about 3 questions there, Robbie.
Stockbrokers, come on, mate. It's never one question.
The first one is rigs are, well, we're finding rigs are quite easy to get hold of now, certainly a lot easier than they were before, and lab turnaround has certainly improved. I think sort of some of our colleagues here would agree. I mean, we were facing sort of 3-month assay delays. In 2021, we had 3 rigs on site, and that was pretty hard when you're sort of trying to sort of do a systematic exploration program and you're not getting the results through time. That's certainly improved. What was the last question, Robbie? Oh, targeting. Look, that's just the targeting changes as we get more information through drilling or other sort of exploration techniques that we're using. But we're really sort of being focused on growing those existing resources, and we just don't want to get distracted. That's what I guess the previous management team did get distracted on, and I think we've demonstrated that our strategy is really working. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Robbie. Good to see you here.
Sorry, just a quick one for me as well, another broker. On the takeover stories, obviously you've been proposed to quite a few times. I was just having a quick flick back through the history with Middle Island, China Gold Sea, and Westgold obviously built a fairly substantial stake. Did you engage with any of those, and why are you the prettiest girl at the dance?
We didn't engage with any of them prior to the bids. Really, very quickly, the story with Middle Island was that Middle Island owned the small oxide mill that we were speaking about, so the proposition was to put the 2 companies together. The second one was a cash bid just as COVID hit and the GFC sort of happened. And Gold Sea are still on our register. They actually like what we're doing, so they're supportive shareholders and they participated in subsequent raisings. And then Westgold didn't make a bid, they've just acquired that block on market. And the other one was a private group, Adamant, which own another mill in the area. So clearly there's a consolidation play in there. I think that's why, for us, the strategy is to rapidly grow our ounces to get that scale, which is a multi-pronged strategy anyway.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, so you've got to put up with me for 15 minutes more. I'll be presenting Tesoro Gold, a company that I co-founded, non-exec director and major shareholder of. It's a pretty simple story, so I know I'm keeping you from the cocktails, so I'll try and move through it pretty rapidly. We actually released a scoping study this morning, phase 1 open pit, starter pit as we like to call it. The company's 3 years old, listed on the ASX and the OTC. We're in Chile. Standard disclaimer that you can read at your leisure. There's been some pretty good drill results talked about here today. Certainly Southern Cross has some very, very nice numbers there. We've had 2,500 gram metre hits, so that means a gram in excess of a gram over 100 metres. So we like to let the drill bit do the talking, or the truth machine as it's commonly known. So, what we've identified here in Chile is the first of its kind. It's an intrusive related gold system. Probably the best analogue is the Tintina province in Alaska. So it's a big system, and you can see that by some of these holes here. This hole here, 434 metres at 1.22. But just as important is some of the intercepts within these big broad zones. So you've got 90 metres at 3, 20 metres at just under 10. So this is a big mineralised system, but it's got some nice high grades in it. Hole 288, 63 at 7, but 7 metres at 2 ounces, 66 grams per tonne. 67 at 3.44 with 13 at 15.84. So again, big broad zones, but there's some nice high grades in there, and that's going to help with the economics of mining. So as I mentioned, we're in Chile. We're 800 kilometres north of Santiago. We're in Region 3, so it's a 1 hour flight from Santiago to Copiapo and the Atacama International Airport, and then it's a 1 hour drive along the Pan-American Highway, the national highway in Chile, to the site. We're 15 kilometres from the Pan-American Highway and 15 kilometres from the Pacific Ocean. And the Pacific Ocean is very important because all our MET test work has been done with seawater, and that is the biggest risk you have in Chile. So we've mitigated that risk by being able to use seawater for all our processing. So we've got a surface area of 570 square kilometres. We're the first mover in this region, which is known as the Coastal Cordillera. The first ones to identify intrusive related gold systems in Chile. I'm sure they've been mined historically, but when you look through the geological literature in Chile, no one talks about intrusive related gold. We've just increased and upgraded our resource to 1.3 million ounces. That's within an optimised pit shell. Total resource is just under 1.5 million. We expect the Tenera deposit to host between 3 to 5 million ounces. And we've got a large land package, and we're expecting to make another discovery later this year with some systematic drilling of specific targets in that land package. At the end of last year, Goldfields, we did a private placement to Goldfields. They put in just under 6 million. They sit at just under 15% of the register. Goldfields' threshold is they're looking for something that's got a minimum of 6 million ounces. So, I think that's a pretty good testament to the operational team on the job they've done within 3 years. So we've drilled 310 diamond holes, 100,000 metres of diamond drilling. As I mentioned, sitting at just under 1.5 million ounces at this point in time, but very confident we're going to get certainly Tenera on its own to 2 million, but we expect it will be between 3 and 5, combination of a open pit and an underground. I don't have the technology of my peer, so I'll give you a simple geological lesson on Chile. So basically the Andes are here, so that's the epithermal gold system. So basically you've got the continental plate, love this technology. Andes up, continental plate or Pacific plate going down, and that's obviously what forms the Andes over here. So that's where you get your epithermals and typically your porphyry coppers. Next, as you move west, you basically get what's called the Atacama zone. So this is a 100-odd kilometre wide fault zone, so that's the Pacific plate pushing under the continental plate. And what you see in there, all those deposits, they're all big IOCG deposits. So you've got Capstone operating Monteverde, Capstone with Santo Domingo, so they're looking to combine those two assets. Got Codelco with Inca de Oro. Cap is a Chilean national company that produces magnetite, and then of course Lundin with Candelaria. So yeah, the other thing that's pretty obvious from Region 3 in Chile is it's a big mining district. So yeah, the majority of the commerce comes from mining and predominantly the IOCG copper deposits. So where we sit is what's known as the third geological belt. So all these geological belts run roughly north-south, and this is what's called the Coastal Cordillera, and you can see those dotted lines. So there's the Atacama fault zone, the big fault zone. You can see these dashed white lines. So basically what they are, they're unsealed roads going up valleys. But those valleys are basically big northwest structures that come out of the Atacama fault zone. So simple geology, you have big structures coming out of a fault zone, intersecting an intrusive and a north-south structure, and where you have those three things happening, you get a lot of gold falling out. So this is a big system. We've now mapped the entire 570 square kilometres. We've got mineralisation, over 20 kilometres outcropping at surface, and probably a testament to that is the fact that the operational team on the ground, of those 310 holes, only 3 holes have not hit a mineable width of mineralisation. Starts at surface, goes to 500 metres depth and still open. The other important thing on this slide is we have grid power from hydro 20 kilometres away. We've got a desalination plant. So as I mentioned, we will We will be using seawater for processing, but we will need some desalinated water or some potable water. So we have a desal plant there that the drillers are already using. They have capacity. The hydropower has capacity. Our team stays in Caldera. They drive to site, 45-minute drive to site between Chanarelle, Caldera and Copiapo. We're basically able to source all our drillers, all our service providers. The only thing we cannot do in this district is our fire assay of our samples, and that's done by ALS in Santiago. So just quickly on our phase one, so this is a small-scale starter pit, basically on the material closest to surface. So 17 million tonnes at 1.25. The plant will be about a 2.4 million tonne per annum throughput. Initial 8-year operating life, 94.5% gold recovery. So it's simple, non-refractory. We actually get 45% of the gold out in gravity. So that's a little unique as well. So average production is just under 100,000 ounces, 651,000 ounces in total. All-in sustaining cost, $1,068 an ounce. Upfront capital, about 132 million US. So pre-tax, NPV at 5% is 200 million, IRR of 27.5% using 1750 ounce gold. So we don't use, we say pre-tax here because there's a few very good things about operating in Chile. One is they give you a tax rebate on VAT. So we've already received $500,000 in rebates back. We'll receive another $3 million before mid-year. So we're fully funded for this year's drilling. We've got just over 7 in the bank. We'll get another 3 in the coming months. And the corporate tax rate's 27%, but basically, like other countries, you can go and negotiate with the government regarding rebates on your tax once you've start commissioning a project. So that tax rate is pretty fluid and generally in the benefit of the producer, where you can have tax holidays and rebates as well. So just looking at the project, the starter pit a little closer. So as I mentioned, sort of NPV, ungeared pre-tax 200 at 1750. That goes up to 300 at 1950 or spot price. Nice straightforward project. We expect this project to produce in the order of 200 to 300,000 ounces per annum. And for us to show that, we need to grow our resource base. And that's probably what excites us the most about this area. There'll be potential to go underground here. There's additional ounces, obviously external to what's in that pit. But what really gets us excited is the district potential. And that's a big part of the reason Goldfields, the world's 8th largest gold producer, invested in the company. So this is a sort of zoom in of the entire property, but there's Tenera. So 1.5 million ounces in total, 1.3 million ounces in a pit optimised shell. But you can see this blue, so this is basically that north-south structure I mentioned. So remember, you got these northwest structures coming out of the Atacama fault zone that sits over here. They intersect what we're now calling the Dorado fault. So we've traced that fault on the order of 20 kilometres continuous. Obviously some areas it's offset, but basically everywhere we sampled that fault over that plus 20 kilometres, it's mineralised. And what we've identified in the last 12 months is some high priority regional targets, but when I'm talking regional, they're within 6 kilometres of the known Tenera deposit. We've drilled Drone Hill, we've drilled Toro Blanco, we've drilled Tenera East, we've drilled Buzzard. We know they're all mineralised from surface. We've put 2 holes into Calderillas. They were scout holes, actually missed the structure and the intrusion, but still hit mineable widths of mineralisation. So the focus of this year is to make another discovery. And the other thing that's important to notice is, that's the surface expression of Tenera as it is now. So that's, 3 years ago, when we first came here, it actually had quite a small surface expression. What gets us, very excited is the surface expression of Kitsune. You can see it's a multiple of what Tenera is now and was. Same with Calderillas and same with Calderillas North. So we anticipate, during this calendar year, with our program that's kicked off on the regional exploration, we will make another discovery, at least another one Tenera or possibly two, and that will most likely be the catalyst for our largest shareholder to acquire the business. So this, again, just talking a bit more about the growth potential. We've done several resources and upgrades, but the important thing to highlight here is, as I said, we believe there'll be at least 3 million ounces at Tenera. So market cap just under 30 million, as I mentioned, 7 in the bank. We'll get that cash rebate in the coming months, so fully funded for this calendar year. 2 rigs running, 1 at Tenera expanding it and 1 testing the regional area. So Geoff Reeves, Sergio Rube and myself founded the company. Sergio's a Chilean national and he's a real differentiator for us operating in Chile. Discovery cost is US $14 an ounce, not as cheap as some of our peers who've spoken here today, but considering that's diamond drill core, that's 1/3 the global average. So global average discovery cost per ounce is about $45 US. So we're very efficient users of our capital. 87% of the capital we've raised has gone directly into the property. Geoff's a geologist. He and I worked together back at Bounty Gold Mine, which most people probably know as Mount Holland nowadays. So we know each other from them. He and Sergio have worked together in Chile for over a decade. So we put the company together about 5 years ago, spent a couple of years looking at assets. This asset stood out to us. I funded it privately for the first couple of years, drilled about a dozen holes and hit our first 100 gram metre hole and then went and listed on the ASX. On the board, Linton Putland, mining engineer. He and I worked together in private equity days. He's done all our mining studies. Christy Young, also a mining engineer. She spent the last decade of her sort of 20-year career working for EY and PwC, developing their ESG offering to their clients. So she brings a very strong ESG focus to the board. Sergio, I've mentioned a local Chilean national. Ruben is he's our only non-Chilean in the group on the ground. He's Peruvian. He's our exploration manager. And then Tatiana recently joined. She worked within the mines department in Chile for about 15 years. So again, very important on the permitting and ESG side of the business. So in light of the fact that it's time for drinks, I might finish 5 minutes early so keep everyone happy. So does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to ask before we wrap up proceedings for the afternoon? Robbie? Good. Yeah, good question. Look, no, we... thank you. Need to go back a bit. So no, we think we've had a lot of work done on the intrusive related gold system. Part of the reason we picked up the property and part of the reason we focused on this specific belt is obviously the infrastructure and the fact that you're on the coast. We're not at altitude, great place to operate. It's Crown land, government land, no inhabitants, driest place on earth, hardly ever rains. We always believed there was potential for intrusive related gold systems here. And our predecessor, Coeur d'Alene, a North American group who are mainly a silver miner, had drilled this. And we couldn't find much raw data from there, but basically reading their reports made us think it was intrusive related gold. And we've just had a PhD student there from New Zealand. Plus we use an ore systems expert from James Cook University to sort of make sure we're not believing too much of our own BS. So yeah, no, we're very confident on that, and that's why we rapidly expanded the footprint to 570 square kilometres. We have been shown a few other properties in the region, which people thought may have been intrusive-related gold, but they were epithermal. But yeah, we haven't found anything else yet, but they've got to exist in Chile, in this coastal Cordillera belt. I mean, so Yamana, that's out of date now. The Yamana transaction closed. To give you an example, and this has not been critical of Chileans or Yamana, but they came to site. We've probably had 7 of the top 10 biggest gold producers to site, and they kept saying to us, show us the vein set, show us the vein sets. And we kept saying to them, this is not epithermal, this is not epithermal. That's why we've got a Peruvian geologist running it. And it's just fundamentally because, the Chileans haven't seen this before, and that's just because of the work environment they've been in. To the point where Yamana Gold actually, carbon dated the rocks. They didn't believe us. But no, good question. Anyone else? All right, so mindful we've got drinks now, and we'd like to thank the Singapore Mining Club. We'd like to thank the other organisers, so obviously everyone will be here tomorrow. We'd like to thank Southern Cross and Alto for sponsoring the drinks tonight. We'd like to thank Richard Offer for sponsoring drinks tonight. And yeah, just to touch once more, so the Singapore Mining Club, there's a 10% discount for anyone who signs up as a member or corporate member during the conference. The guys have organised, if you haven't had enough drinks after the cocktail event tonight, you can go, as I mentioned, to Penaminko, which is a walk away at Chimes, and if you quote Gold Rush, you'll get a 10% discount on house beverages. And my understanding, I've been given this note, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but basically if you walk outside, there'll be a bar close by, I think is what the message is trying to tell me. I'm sure we're all thirsty enough that we'll be able to find the bar on our own. Lots of geologists in here. If you need a hand, just ask for a geologist. All right, thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed the afternoon. And look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow as well. Thank you.